Welcome back, everyone, to the T.R.O.N podcast, The Randomness of Nothing. This is your host, Rashad Woods. Today, I have a very special guest today, author, entrepreneur, small business owner, as well as counselor, and assist people through large varieties of life because life happens. From our neighbor to the north, Sabrina Trobak. How are you?
Hi, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you. You know, you have such an interesting career path trajectory. You've worked in schools, which eventually led you to holistic work, as well as helping people through anxiety, stages of life, because ultimately we realize sometimes that we're actually having self-destructive habits and we don't even know it. And you've noticed that and worked on that throughout your career as well as an author. So please tell me about your background.
Sure. So I was a teacher for 20 years. I worked in all three school divisions. So in Canada, we have elementary, junior high, and high school. I worked in everything from kindergarten prep all the way up to grade 11 sciences. I was mostly, though, a learning assistant teacher working in smaller groups with kids that were struggling academically, math, English, reading, behavior, organization, different kinds of things. And one of the things that was very, very prevalent throughout was they all struggled with confidence. They're struggling with reading or math or behavior. They don't fit the norm of what's out there. And so their confidence can be impacted pretty significantly. Towards the end of my teaching career, I decided to go into counseling to see if I could help more at that kind of confidence level. And started working with kids in the counseling perspective. And then I went to a workshop on suicide that was looking at suicide through that perspective of that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued.
Right.
At the end of the 3-day workshop, I just thought, this is what I need to do. So I talked to Tony Martins, the presenter, and we went back and forth for about a year, but he agreed to teach me his model of therapy, at which point I quit my teaching and started my own private practice in my own counseling agency. That was back in 2010. And within 6 months, I had a waiting list. I've had a waiting list ever since, sometimes up to, 2-year waiting list. So I hate having to turn people away. So I decided to write a book to be able to provide a resource for people who can't access counseling for whatever reason.
So my question is since you have such a big waiting list, are there other people who work with you, other registered counselors, or is you just a solo practice?
Well, I've been through both. So when I started up, I was solo, but my waiting list definitely said I could use more counselors. So I had a staff with me for a while, but my passion is working with clients. When you have a staff, you have to spend more time managing staff's clients. And it just wasn't the same. It wasn't as fulfilling for me. And I'm 57. I thought, you know what? I'm going to do what I want to do. So after COVID, I went back to my own private practice it's just little old me now, for sure.
For sure. Here's, because I think, and maybe this, my wife's Canadian, so I kind of have a little bit of Canadian connection, but not West Coast Canadian, right? So do you find that just in general that it's been more acceptable when it comes to people actually seeking counseling for things as opposed to, I'm 42 and it was the old adage of put a Band-Aid on it, right? So do you find that as the years have passed that, hey, I didn't do this when I was younger because for whatever reasons I internalized this versus now like, boy, this is a lot of pent up years, maybe even decades, that I'm very glad that I can finally go because it was a little bit, quote unquote, shame to have to seek outside services?
Yeah, I think there's been a bit of an interesting shift that has happened even just since I've been in practice in 2010. When I came into counseling, women were pretty okay to come to counseling. And now it's almost like something that you can count, that you can say, well, I have a counselor. It's almost a form of pride for women. For men, for men, there's been a bit of a different shift. When I first started my practice, I didn't see hardly any men. I was lucky if I had maybe 20% men in my counseling.
Of course.
And of those 20%, they were usually being drug in by their wife. They wouldn't park in front of my building. They'd park a couple blocks away because they didn't want to be seen. Right. They wouldn't sit in my waiting room. I'd have to text them and say, oh, you can come in. And they'd come up through the back door with their hoodies on. But usually within about 2 or 3 sessions, they were like, give me your card. I got to tell all my buddies about this.
Right.
So it's that stigma that they had to break through.
Correct.
Once they broke through it, they realized, wow, this is amazing.
Absolutely.
Now in my practice, I'm pretty much 50-50 men and women. And I present workshops for my community. I do free workshops for my community. When I first started, I was lucky if I'd get 1 or 2 men there. Now, again, we're up to probably anywhere from 35 to 60% of the people that come to my workshops are men as well. So we're seeing a real shift where men are going, okay, I don't want to just be the workhorse. I got stuff. I need to figure things out. I don't feel content. I'm not happy. I want to work on me. So I think that's a great shift for sure.
Right. And it's, because typically, obviously me being a guy, I think the thing about it is too, is like, hey, I'm just going to work out. Hey, I'll just cut the grass. Right. Or for lack of a better term, use clean language. I'm just going to STF you. Right. I'm just going to shut down and just sit, and everything eventually will be okay. And I'm transitioning when I say this because I think in your field, you've probably seen a correlation from people who shut down to what could be criminal or destructive behavior, right? There's a very thin line between, people who have anxiety and versus somebody who's in jail or did something very violent towards a spouse or their loved ones or a total stranger for that matter. Did you see correlations in that throughout your field of work?
I think everyone who pushes emotion down, which is all of us, has unhealthy coping strategies. That's what an unhealthy coping strategy is it's used to shut down our emotions. So if it's done to the extreme, it's more unhealthy. So even like you said, mowing the lawn and, I can keep myself busy and work all the time. And then I'm not spending any time with my family. I'm not connecting. I feel taken advantage of. No one appreciates all that I'm doing, but I'm kind of doing it to myself. But when I'm doing those things, I don't have to feel my emotion. Right. So we see that with things like alcohol, drugs, anger, domestic violence as well, right?
Absolutely.
Where it just intensifies. But all of that is really about I'm hurting and I don't know how to deal with it. Right. And so I just push it down till it gets to the point that I can't cope anymore. And then I kind of explode, anger, or implode, go out and get really drunk, use a bunch of drugs, watch a bunch of pornography, gamble, whatever it is, kind of pushes everything back down. I feel okay again. Right. But then that cycle starts again because we haven't really dealt with any emotion. Exactly. And in fact, we've added more because after we do those things, we feel shame, guilt, regret, betrayal, disconnected, all those other emotions as well.
Right. And I thought what was interesting was when I was listening to one of your episodes, which you were talking about, it could be something as simple as reading a book. And you're like, we're reading a book. What are you talking about? And then you're like, well, if you're staying up till 4:00 in the morning and then you become immersed in the characters, right? And it's almost like that Twilight Zone episode where Burgess Meredith got stuck in the bank, right? And then, the apocalypse happened, and he's the teller, but all that mattered was the books around him, right? And we all have seen how that ended, where his glasses broke at the end. But I was reading a book, what was she talking about? And then I was like, oh my goodness, it didn't even occur to me, right?
Yeah. A lot of people focus on the strategy and say, oh, that's unhealthy, that's healthy. It's not true. It's how you use it. Exercise. If I'm working out for, hour, couple hours, several days a week, probably a healthy coping strategy. Yeah. But if I'm exercising all the time, I'm depleting my calories, I'm choosing exercise over my family, then it's unhealthy. Right. So we need to look past the actual coping strategy and look at how am I using it? Is it helping me? Is it making me more productive in my life, feel more content, help me sort through and deal with my emotions? Then it's probably a healthy coping strategy. If I'm using it to escape and avoid emotions, it's likely more unhealthy.
That makes sense.
Healthy coping strategies give us a break, but it's not an escape.
Do you tell people then to start putting time limits on the amount of time that they spend on a certain activity to give a break? Is that how when you break down a session with people?
That it sounds logical, but no. If I told you to stop whatever it is, don't do it as much, would you listen to me?
No.
Probably not.
Probably no.
Right? So what we always go for it is at a deeper level.
Okay.
Why? Why did you spend 4 hours gambling last night online when you haven't gambled in 3 weeks?
Okay.
What's going on?
That makes sense.
Let's use this as a bit of a cue. Then what we do is we go through and look at what's the last week been like? Tell me all the things that have happened in the last week. And so they say, well, my furnace broke down. It's going to cost me $7,000 to get it fixed. Yep. My child's report card came back and she's really struggling and I don't know what to do to help her.
Right.
Our dog got out of the yard and I have to fix the fence. My wife's pissed off at me because she told me to fix the fence 6 weeks ago and I didn't do it.
Right.
All these things. So we say, okay, those are a lot of events, but that's not what's creating your stress or your need to go and gamble.
Right.
It's the emotions connect to it. So then we go back and look at each event. What emotions did that create? So the furnace, we go through, I give them a list of emotions. They write all the emotions they feel about the furnace, about their daughter, about the dog getting out, about their wife. Then we go back again and say, which core belief is being triggered? Not good enough, not important, not valued. They go through that process again. After they go through that, they've sorted through those emotions. They feel a lot better. That emotion has been suppressed. Now they're not going to be spending 4 hours gambling. So we use those things as cues to help us figure out what's going on rather than just whack the behavior.
So it's not just good enough to say, well, you spent 5 hours on this week. We're going to decrease it to 2 hours and then make sure that you feel better, so to speak, because that's, that makes a lot of sense too, because until you actually get to the root cause of what's causing you to feel that way, reducing the activity level itself is not really going to actually get to what could solve something for somebody.
Right. The behavior is just the symptom. We have to figure out what's feeding that behavior. One of the things this model of therapy says is everything we do for a reason. If I can understand the reason, then I can change the behavior. But if I don't understand the reason, the chance of long-term change is going to be very limited. Got
it. So you obviously you worked with kids when you started in school, and you worked yourself all the way up to looks like the vice principal level. Did you see people who had characteristics and behaviors as young children that carried over to adulthood? I'm not obviously I'm not looking to spread anybody's information, but did you see, hey, I have a feeling this is what, even if you weren't a counselor, you knew, like, this is what I'm likely going to see in the future with this person that kind of correlated to your current practices?
For sure. Parents normalize behavior. And so if I have a parent who is, drinking, not even in excess, but let's say drinking, 2 to 6 or 8 beer a night, there's a really high chance that their children are going to use alcohol as a way to kind of numb, to feel better, to de-stress, because that's likely what the parents said a lot, right? So now in junior high, they're starting to drink. Am I surprised? No, not at all, right? Chances that if that becomes a normal practice of behavior, they're using alcohol to suppress emotion, they're going to continue to use that.
Correct.
And so when they're 20, 30, 40, that pattern of behavior continues. For sure. Right? We go to what we know. If it works, I ain't going to change it. Why bother? There's no point. I'm just going to keep using that same behavior. Absolutely. If for whatever reason it doesn't work, I drink alcohol and it makes me really physically ill, then I'm not going to use it. But I'm still thinking, but I got to find something else to numb this. So maybe it's marijuana. Right? Maybe it's gambling. Maybe it's porn. Maybe it's busyness. Right? It's going to be something to numb. So as parents, it's vital that we're teaching our children how to feel their emotions so they don't have to suppress them.
Absolutely.
But the only way parents can do that is they have to be able to feel their own emotions.
Well, it's funny too, because, when you have kids, it's like, how do you stay close but give them distance to grow, right? So, it's like that car ride, hey, how was your day going? How was school the other day? Good. And then there's that awkward silence for like 20 seconds but you didn't ask the proper question in your mind and say, what did you do yesterday, as opposed to how was yesterday? And so, and I had to figure that out as a parent, because, or like even something silly to open it up, I would just be like, hey, you look really nice today, and then you can see like the smile, like on the side of the face, because I have 3 daughters, right? And it's like, okay, I can't just ask this generic good yes or no. Like the yes or no question doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. More open-ended questions. But again, that's something that has to be learned and taught for parents, but then also learned and taught for kids as well. Right. Sure. So if I even say to my child, tell me your best thing about the day, they can still say, well, I don't know. I mean, that's a go-to, right? And so it's even learning, how do I challenge that I don't know?
Yeah.
So even saying something like, well, okay, maybe you don't know for sure, but what do you think it might be?
Absolutely.
Give me 2 or 3 of your favorite things from the day. That's easier than one. Right. One is like this pressure that I got to nail it and get it right the first time.
For sure.
2 or 3, I can do that, no problem.
Exactly.
Right? So just learning those little tricks to help figure out what works with your child is really, really, really important.
Right. And so also too, what helped me, and just to pivot slightly, one of my daughters plays violin, and it was like, okay, I'm going to pivot towards this conversation because I know that you enjoy doing that, and I have a better likelihood of an open-ended conversation as opposed to just, hey, how was yesterday? Right. So those little things help, when you tailor it towards something that somebody enjoys a little.
Well, and I think as parents, that's really, really important, because what often happens is our children end up catering to our needs, what's important for us, what we enjoy, what we think is right, what we think they should do.
Right.
How are they building their identity when they're constantly just trying to please us, right? When I deal with adults, a lot of my clients say, I don't even know who I am. A lot of my clients actually say, I lost who I was.
Right.
And I say, I disagree. I don't think you lost yourself, because I don't think you ever found it.
Oh, wow.
You spend your whole life trying to please your mom, please your dad, please your teachers, please your coach, please your siblings, please your friends. You never actually took time and figured out, what do I want? What do I want to be? What do I want to do? So it's important as parents that we're doing that. We're really focusing on, what do you want? What do you need? Right? What's important to you? Doesn't matter what I think. What do you think? Right? But then you got to find boundaries, because then we go to the other side where they just have free for all. They're allowed to run wild.
Exactly.
So we still need boundaries in there of, no, you need to clean your room, set the table, all those kind of chores. No, you can't stay out until 4:00 in the morning. Right? Yeah. But also developing those boundaries. That's a tough balance to create, for sure.
Of course. I thought what was interesting too, and I never thought about this, was when you said that procrastination is a sign of anxiety. And I think people sometimes correlate procrastination with laziness, but I didn't think that it was actually, to correlate a little bit to your book, not good enough. And the reasons why people don't start things or put things off is actually due to their, anxiety level that they're actually exhibiting.
Right. And, another symptom of anxiety is laziness.
Okay.
They both work the same way, right? Anxiety is lack of confidence, not believing in myself that I can handle something.
Right.
So what's the chances I'm going to procrastinate and put it off?
Unquestionably.
Really, really, right? It's really, really, really high, for sure.
Right.
And again, that's where we need to look past the behavior and understand what's going on. So, if you're procrastinating, why am I procrastinating? Well, it's really big. It's really overwhelming. I don't even know where to start. Or, I can hold it over my head and continue to go, I haven't done that yet. I haven't done that yet. I haven't done that yet. I get to reinforce that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. So we need to look at why we're doing what we're doing. Once we do that, then we can figure out strategies, put a plan in place to challenge those things. Then we can move through that behavior.
Got it.
Laziness was a big one I saw in the schools when I was working in junior high. By the time kids got to junior high, they were already defeated.
Oh.
The kids that were struggling academically, right? They're already reading 2-3 levels below grade. They struggle with their written output, often are very smart. They know the information. They just can't get it out. So now they have a choice. They can be lazy and say, I don't care, and fail the test, or they can work hard and try, but still have that fear of failing the test.
Mm-hmm.
They would rather be labeled lazy than stupid.
Right.
So as a learning assistant exactly. So as a learning assistant teacher, my goal was to help them see you can study and you can actually not only pass this test, but do really well. You're very smart. You just have trouble getting it out. So we're going to have a scribe who's going to write your answers for you. You don't have to read the questions. You don't have to write the answers down. You just get to talk through the test.
Nice.
They do that 1, 2, 3 times. Now all of a sudden they're getting 90%. Guess what? They're not lazy anymore.
Right.
So it was never about lazy. It was what they were doing to cope with the fact that they felt defeated and they didn't know how to do the work and get their information out. Tests in school are not done so that we can get knowledge. Tests are to test my ability to get the knowledge out.
Correct.
For a lot of kids who have attention deficit learning disabilities, tests aren't a real true indication of what's really going on and how much they really know.
Well, that's the thing, right? So I've always said, particularly as I've gone with my kids, and talked to them, whether they did great, good, bad, indifferent, I'm not saying indifferent, good or bad. Did you try your best, and how did the information get discerned with what you were handling. You know, the 90% sometimes, I think, or above, especially a kid who's a high achiever, when they don't get that, is devastated, right? But it's not a barometer of how smart you are. I mean, there's people that have dropped out of high school that have become infinitely successful in life at other things.
For sure.
And I think it's very important to sit back and say that, like you said, all that test did was say, were you able to handle this nugget of information and transpose it to the answers that were in front of you? But this is not a barometer of how smart you are as a human being.
Right. For sure. For sure.
And so, unfortunately, you know, due to school and class sizes, they sometimes can't personalize the learning for each individual kid, which is why your services are available and out there.
Right, for sure. And it's challenging for sure if you don't fit in that kind of typical framework of what, you know, what a student is supposed to look like. It can be more challenging for sure.
Oh, for sure. So really briefly, let's talk about your book, please, because I thought Not Good Enough. As soon as I see, even when you see the cover of that, it's all of a sudden like, my goodness, it's out there for everybody to kind of feel that way. So how did the book come about, and, you know, the content of it all, please?
So the model of therapy that I practice, that was created by Tony Martins, who did that workshop, it's the foundation of it. So it's what I do every day, all day long with my clients, is help them better understand their core belief, not good enough, but also not important, not valued, and how that core belief has developed throughout your life, and then what we need to do to challenge and change that core belief to being more good enough. And so in the book, it helps the reader sort through that. So it is a hands-on book. So you basically read a small part, and then you apply the activity to your own personal experiences. So it really helps you get a better understanding of how your core belief has developed over the years, why it's where it's at, and then it looks at strategies and different things you can do to help you manage that. It talks about anxiety. You know, anxiety and core belief go hand in hand.
Yes.
Anxiety is lack of confidence, not believing in yourself you can handle things. If your core belief is not good enough, you're going to have more anxiety. So as you challenge and change that core belief, the anxiety becomes less. As you challenge the anxiety, the core belief good enough becomes stronger.
Got it.
Connects anxiety to anger. Anger is a coping strategy we use to suppress other emotions. Anxiety is one of them as well. So it helps you gain a better understanding of anger. What does your anger look like? Mm-hmm. And then what can you do to help you challenge those? Looks at emotions, teaches you how to figure out how to feel emotions. Emotions are a physiological response to the thoughts we're having. Right. That's it.
Right.
And so most of us though don't realize, like, what does sad feel like in your body? Most people go, what? I don't know. Tears. And so it runs through where you actually stop and think about, what does it feel like in my body to feel these different emotions? Right. Once you become more aware of what it feels like in your body, then you can start to feel those emotions as well. And then it gives you a variety of different strategies you can use to challenge anger, anxiety, get better at feeling emotions, and challenging that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued.
Well, I have to ask this question. Do you have like people who are in athletics at all that reach out to you? Because, you know, oftentimes you see like a sport, right, where the person clearly couldn't cope with what they were doing athletically. I only ask because while you're talking, I'm a huge boxing and mixed martial arts fan, right? And you can see when the fighter gets, for lack of a better term, very upset, and you're like, either they got hit below an area that wasn't legal or things weren't going their way, and then there's a meltdown that just goes downhill. So do you find people, particularly have you ever had any athletics people in sports who said, I need to cope mentally with better tasks when the emotions of an athletics competition is getting really high?
For sure. So I'm in northern British Columbia.
Yes.
So we have a lot of hockey here. And so I do work with a lot of hockey players, male and female.
Yeah.
You know, and often what kind of happens if we have an athlete who's kind of specializing in one area, their identity kind of gets stuck in that. I'm a hockey player, so I need to be the best I can as a hockey player. If I have a bad game, then I'm across the board. So I'm using my hockey as a way to cover up that core belief, not good enough, not important, not valued. Right. So as soon as there's a little hole in there, everything can kind of implode. Right. So again, we're often going back and really looking at, okay, we get hockey, but let's really look at life in general. Hockey's just one aspect of who you are, right? Yes. And so I've dealt with very, very successful businessmen and women who struggle with that core belief, not good enough, to look at them, everyone would say, oh, they must be so happy, so wonderful. They've got all the bells, all the whistles, all the things, but it's never enough. They're always trying for more, for more, for more, for more. Why? Because they believe they're not good enough.
Right.
Once they feel good enough, they can be more comfortable and content with what they have.
Right.
You know, I've worked with models, right?
Crazy.
Look perfect.
Yes.
They often really struggle with that core belief because they feel the only part of their identity is their outer appearance.
Right. And they have no other value.
And so,
right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. Because, sometimes when you hear, somebody, had successful or perceived to be very successful, has I don't want to say insecurity, but has anxiety or something like that, people kind of roll their eyes. Like there's a group of people out there say, well, if I was in your position or your shoes, I wouldn't be insecure about anything. Right. And you're like, that's not a correlation of what that person truly could be going through.
Right. I think anyone can say that about anyone else, but until you're actually in their shoes, you don't know what they went through, what their experiences are. Even people who didn't experience a lot of trauma, we were not taught how to feel our emotions. Mm-hmm. If I'm holding all my emotions in for years and years, for decades, it is going to have an impact on my belief in my ability to handle little things.
Yes.
If I'm full up with emotion and something small happens, like the E on my fuel gauge comes up on my vehicle, and it can, all of a sudden it's this big, huge, massive deal.
Yep.
And so even the most successful people often have never been taught how to feel their emotions and sort through their emotions. So that core belief is going to be there to some degree. It can vary in degrees for sure, but it's often is a fuel, right? If I make $1 million, then I'll be good enough. Okay, well now if I make $5 million, then I'll be good enough, right? And it just keeps going and going because it's never about that goal. As long as you're looking out here, you're never going to find it.
Absolutely.
You got to look in here.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's, and I think that's one of the reasons that appealed so much to me when we got a chance to do this episode, right? Because I think a lot of times success and happiness is a very visual thing. Even when you go on Instagram and you see people, oh, I'm living my best life, right? Like social media pressures. It's like, listen, man, you gotta find a way to make sure that there's something internal that's happening with you and find your trigger points and things like that. I'm sure there's a lot more that we could go deeper into that, but I've certainly been educated a lot more just listening to you and the approach that you take.
Good.
Where can people find you? So I always ask everybody this, like, you don't need me, you're very successful. Where can people find Sabrina Trobak and her authorship and her work? Right.
So my book is available on Amazon, but I also have a website, trobakholistic.org. On my website, there's a page for finding my book. It also has links to all of my social media. I am on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok and Facebook. I also have a blog on my page. And so the blog offers a variety of different topics, mental health kind of topics. Again, people with anxiety often struggle more with reading. So they're short. They're 2 to 4 minutes long. That was one of the challenges in writing the book is how do I write a book for people who don't like to read? Right. So the book is written in a larger font. It's written at about a grade 6-7 reading level. So it doesn't have a ton of big words, and it's broken up into very small sections. It's got lots of diagrams, lots of charts to help break it up so you don't have to read as much on there as well. So I have a blog that does that as well. And then on my website, I also have a page that has the podcast interviews that I've done as well.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I can tell you that I'm absolutely humbled that you carved out a little bit of time, particularly since you're on a different time zone and you made some early time available. And I wish nothing but the best of your continued success. And more importantly, thank you for all the lives you have impacted.
Thanks for having me. It was nice chatting with you today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the T.R.O.N podcast.